program is simulcast on WRFPLP 101.9 FM.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Your voices and Supervisor Stelzis will now do the moment of reflection.
Thank you, Chair Smyer. So, in preparation for tonight, I wanted to look up again what reflection meant in this context. And it means to think about something carefully, perhaps to review something again for a deeper understanding. So over the past couple weeks, there have been a number of events that have made me wonder and reflect about the nature of humans. The unspeakable cruelty and murder of George Floyd. A call for dominance of protesters instead of leadership. The opening of our county parks and beaches, and then they immediately filling up to capacity at 9:30 in the morning on a weekday. And our species and its social structures brought to its knees by a microscopic virus. So what do these say about us? We have our laws and we have technologies. We have science and we have religion. But how do any of those connect the events of the weeks past? I really struggle to see how being human connects these. But I do believe that we are much more creatures of nature than we generally want to admit. We behave in tribal clans, wanting to belong to the clan that benefits us the most. We compete for resources, be they natural, like for our food and clothing and shelter, or social, like education and healthcare. And much of this competition is done via our market economy, and the score is kept in money. If we want land or water for our houses, food or recreation, we have no problem taking it from others by means of money. And we have no issue with dominance over other people or flora or fauna that do not get to participate in the market economy. That's the human way. I'm not saying our economy is bad. It's just another form of natural selection with winners and losers. And we crave to be in the natural world. Being in the presence of forests and fields and water provide us something. What is it about humans that they need this? And we are vulnerable to predators, as small as a virus and as dangerous as our fellow human. So as this board works on the business of organized society, trying to serve our citizens, please reflect on what it means to be human, both good and bad. We are creatures of the natural world, and our society is just an invention to manage our behaviors in that world. Thank you.
Thank you. County Clerk Loomis, are you on?
Yes, sir.
Would you please do the roll? Supervisors, please unmute as you indicate your presence.
Gibson.
Here.
McKinney.
Present.
Knight. Joe Knight. I know I saw you, so I'm going to say you're here.
He's still muted. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm here.
Again, I saw her there, so I'm going to consider her.
Oh, I
present.
didn't hear you call me. I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anton? Well, that's not Anton's voice. Zook? Again, I saw you were on, so I'm going to consider you present. Chilson?
Yes, present.
Seljas?
Here.
Maury?
Here.
Coffee?
Here.
Henning?
Here.
Bates?
Here.
Russell? Gatlin?
Here.
Smyer?
Here.
Hambook Boyle?
She's muted.
Muted, yeah.
Again, I know she is on, so I'm going to put her as present.
Here.
Thank you. Neiman? Dunning?
Here.
Wilkie? Anderson?
Present.
Beckfield?
Wilkie now present.
Oh, thank you. Beckfield? Again, I saw you on, so I'm going to consider you present. Schneider?
Here.
Leary?
Here.
DeLuca?
Here.
Jansen?
Here.
Stroffnagel?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Frank?
Here.
Thank you. Thank you. Christofferson?
Here.
There is 2 absent, 27 present.
Who are the 2 absent, please?
It is Supervisor Anton and Supervisor Neiman.
Okay.
Neiman's there.
I thought I
Saw Neiman?
Sit here. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. There's just one absent, then Supervisor Anton.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is approval of the Journal of Proceedings for May the 19th, 2020. Have a motion, please. Let's do this patiently. Send your motion by chat. We'll wait for a motion. Motion by Supervisor Gatlin, second by
Neiman.
Second by Supervisor Neiman. Thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the Journal of Proceedings? I'll wait a moment here. I hear none. We will do this by voice vote. Momentarily, will you please unmute for voice vote? Please unmute. All those in favor of accepting the Journal of Proceedings as distributed, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by nay? Hear no nay, so it is unanimous. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is public comment. We have 2 public comments submitted in writing. One is relatively brief and the other is relatively long. I'm going to ask the county clerk to read first the shorter of the public comments and second the second one. Would you please identify the person who is making the comment? Thank you.
Chair Smyer, this is Janet. I do not have them.
Oh, sorry.
Samantha, do you have them?
I emailed 2 to you this evening and 1 earlier this week, but I can certainly read them or email them to you.
Let's just for the sake of time, let's have you read them, Samantha.
Okay. Let me just find the first one here. Sorry, everyone. Okay. So the first, I actually have 3, Chair Smyer, so I'll read this one first, the shorter one.
Thank you.
This is from Bob Paddock, Paddock, and his comment is, I'm hoping that action will be taken so that the resolution may be forwarded to the Wisconsin Natural Resources Board in Madison, as that is where the final number of antlerless permits will be finalized. And this is in regard to the deer harvest permits on county forest.
Yep.
The second one, give me just one moment. The second one is from Kelsey Dubé, a white woman from Eau Claire. And her comment is, I don't doubt that when these words come together, racism is a public health crisis. We all have our own ideas of what that looks like. My mind jumps to the tragic murder of George Floyd that happened just 3 weeks ago. That wound is very fresh in my mind. After the large pause and disbelief of seeing what happened to him, then followed the panic, I couldn't help but wonder all of those other stories of murder were true. Where else is this happening? Here in Eau Claire? Never. I started to do some self-reflection, but at the time, committed to listening to Black voices. Why? Because those are the ones in pain. This is a specific problem for them. Being harmed by those who are supposed to protect and support them, essentially what Eau Claire County does in many ways. So I ask myself again, here in Eau Claire, yes. It's the situations where my OC coworkers tell me they don't feel safe or heard. The comments from community members regarding working with the county, members saying, how can I deal with these white people? They don't get it. My life isn't like theirs. It's the times I walk by Black people from our community without really looking at them. At times I feel scared and uncomfortable for no reason. It's always been my experience and reaction. Then I think that must be theirs too. People fearing them without reason but their skin color. How harmful for someone's day-to-day experience, life, and overall well-being. Being people themselves. The power that this resolution holds is what our community needs right now. An actual step towards action to unite us and to heal us. The more we dive into these inequalities, the closer we get to healing a broken system. This isn't something POC people can make better. I truly hope we all understand at this point. It's something those with power and privilege have to make better. If you don't understand why, I beg you to educate yourself. People's lives and well-beings are on the line.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And then the very last one, as Chair Smyer mentioned, a little bit longer. To Eau Claire County Board members. My name is David Carlson. I live at 2212 Altoona Avenue, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 54701. I am writing to comment on the announcement of racism being designated a public health crisis by the Eau Claire County Board. I am very much in support of this designation. I work for Milkweed Connections, LLC out of Menominee. We contract with several counties' comprehensive community service programs, including Eau Claire County. We at Milkweed provide peer support and mentorship for consumers in the CCS program. The demographic I mainly work with is youth under the age of 18 years old. Most of the youths I work with are minorities. In my work, these young people I have seen them have to face treatment teams, educators, law enforcement, and providers who have very little awareness as to how much more difficult it is to manage past traumas, daily life, dislocation, and in some cases, legal trouble. When on top of all of that, you are treated differently because of your skin color. In most cases, I am alone in supporting these kids because these intense racial disconnects. I by no means want to imply that CCS, providers, or even law enforcement are willfully ignoring these young people's predicament. Rather, I believe that there is not enough acknowledgement on the part of the communities on what these kids are enduring. Furthermore, I see the young people of color's actions being portrayed as if they are criminals, while a white kid who is white and displays the same behaviors gets treated with compassion and understanding. This is the depth of the implicit and explicit racism existence in the Wisconsin public. Children of color are being stereotyped well before they even understand why they are being singled out. These issues remain unaddressed because most departments of human services take the back seat when it comes to budgeting. If we truly wanted our communities safer and valued the lives and successes of Black and brown people, no expense would be too high to ensure they are given wraparound support to counterbalance the traumatic past many of these children have endured. This announcement of racism being a public health crisis legitimizes these young people's challenges, and that what they are experiencing is not imagined. It also forces providers, educators, law enforcement, etc., to take a hard look at why this issue is not the forefront of their mind when they are interacting with youth of color. The problem exists within the social consciousness of Wisconsin white culture, not within the genetic makeup, skin color, or minds of kids of color. Another issue I would like to address are the activities taking place within the Eau Claire County Sheriff's Department. The recent high-intensity drug trafficking designation will initiate federal funds being dispersed to the Sheriff's Department. How is this going to be reflected in the county budget now that the Sheriff's Department has excess funds at its disposal? What not mandated services are being looked at as possible cuts in the budget? Homeless shelters, reentry program, and other community services could end up on the chopping block. This is extremely concerning because these services will disproportionately impact Black and brown people in the community, and by extension, their children. Convenience and utility are far too often the excuses used to make decisions that reinforce existing racist and oppressive systems. I think that a positive step forward would be to discuss disbanding the West Central Drug Task Force, an organization created during the original war on drugs, a war that has disproportionately impacted Black and brown people in this community and throughout the state, and has been highly ineffective in curbing the use of drugs, the prevalence of drugs, or the crimes committed by individuals under the influence of drugs. Furthermore, the West Central Drug Task Force is a non-mandated service. Funds saved by discontinuing the war on drugs could be diverted to reentry initiatives, homeless shelter improvements, further addiction programming, and for use of the peer support providers and mentors to be support systems for individuals stuck in cycles of recidivism. This is the best investment of taxpayer money. It is evidence-based. It will also decrease the disparities in recovery programming available for Black and brown people as long as these services start being more accessible to people of color. Another non-mandated service, treatment courts, should also end up being considered for cancellation. This must not happen. Additionally, treatment courts must fix their assessment criteria that ends up blocking the admittance of so many Black and brown people. The inherent discrimination in the treatment court qualifications in our county cause people of color to receive longer sentences in jail and prison because they are not eligible to participate in programs like drug court. There is too much at stake to not start taking a close look at the practices we employ in this county. The announcement that racism is a public health crisis is a start, but it is only the beginning. Drastic action must be taken now. If it is not, we will be back here again in the future repeating this process, or it will be our kids who are here dealing with the same problems. This is a moral issue we are facing. The Black and brown community has paid the consequences of inaction far too long. Is Eau Claire County going to take real steps forward in remedying this wrong? David Carlson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is reports to the county board under 2.04.320, beginning with oral reports. The first is the strategic plan overview. Rob Carwath, who is, I believe, online.
Hello there. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rob Carwath with North Coast Communications. I'm the county's consultant on the strategic plan incorporating Speak Your Piece, the civility project. The county strategic planning team and I come before you tonight seeking approval for the final version of the strategic plan for the next 2 to 4 years. We're here after a fairly extensive process in what I think we all would agree with have been really extraordinary times. It's been a pleasure to work with you. It's been a pleasure to work with the citizens of the county, the administration, the department heads, county staff members, as we've assembled this plan. I believe we have a strong plan before you tonight. We also believe it stands to help the county even more than it would in normal times, more normal times. And really that's the case because of the importance in addressing vital strategic issues during a time of stress on county resources and uncertainty. We're certainly facing that right now in the midst of COVID-19. We're all working our way through this pandemic, but as we do, a strategic plan can and will help us stay focused on priorities that were first addressed by our friends and neighbors, the citizens of Eau Claire County. We started with them by asking what they thought, and we've taken to heart their suggestions and imperatives. We intend also to stay committed and connected with them as we move forward. So we've worked through the department heads, the Committee on Administration. We showed an initial draft of the plan to you several weeks ago. We made adjustments and changes at each step, and I want to say thank you because your fresh eyes and perspectives have helped us make the strategic plan better. Since we last came before you, we've incorporated your suggestions for changes in high-level goals and objectives that are part of this plan. And then we also went back to the department heads and updated the strategies and tactics that we need underneath each of these goals and objectives to make the desired outcomes happen. You'll recall that because of COVID-19, we have focused most intensely on goal 1, and that's to stabilize our county finances and operations. That's really because we've agreed that this is our most important and vital work in the current crisis. So after receiving input from the department heads now, we reviewed the plan last week again with the Committee on Administration, and tonight we bring it before you for final approval. I'd say that even after approval, any good strategic plan is never completely done. It should be a document that the county refers to and uses quite often, especially in the midst of responding to COVID-19. A good strategic plan is a set of desired outcomes for the next few years. Where do we want Eau Claire County to be? Where do we want it to go? In the next 2 to 4 years, we're going to see a lot of change, but the county's core goals and objectives shouldn't change. We want solid finances. We want strong communities and a high quality of life for our citizens. We want economic development. So what probably can and will change are some of the ways we get there, strategies and tactics. Tonight, with everybody's help, we put together our best assessment of how we believe we would get there now. And I think it's fair to say we're likely to stay on course in many respects, but it's also likely that many new opportunities will emerge or change may come. Different ways of getting there may present themselves. Even if they do, the value of a strong strategic plan is that it provides a roadmap to a clear destination, a compass to true north, if you will. So we know where we want to go. We have a tool to get there. We also have a guide to help us keep charting the best course as the road, even if the road takes a few unexpected turns. I want to commend the county for deciding to do the hard work of developing a strategic plan. Many units of government, lots of businesses, other private organizations, nonprofits, they don't bother, they don't feel they can afford to go to that effort. But you did, and we all know that you can get by without a strategic plan, that it's just not as thoughtful or as efficient. And it doesn't take into account the thoughts and perspective of all parties, especially in our case, the people of Eau Claire County. From the start, the county, you as county leaders and stewards were clear. You said we want a strategic plan that starts with our people, our friends and our neighbors. We want their input. This plan also comes up with some locked-in commitments to stay in conversation with our fellow citizens. We've built in some mechanisms for continuing those conversations, often using Speak Your Piece, which is a tried and true program for community building. We use Speak Your Piece to solicit input at the start of the process, and we'll continue to keep people engaged in and contributing to what's happening in their county government with its help. When we started, we received not only valuable input at our 5 community meetings, we also got lots of email exchanges with people who as well as some of those who couldn't but wanted to stay in touch and were interested in the process. After tonight, all of those folks will receive a copy of the process, a copy of the plan that the county board approves in final form. And we'll stay in touch with them as we move through the next few years. This is the first time, I believe, that the county has had these kinds of community meetings and pledged such a high level of transparency and engagement. And I think it's appropriate because in these extraordinary times, we all can agree we need everybody's head in the game, everybody's head in the huddle as we seek the best outcomes for the county. Before I conclude tonight, I want to briefly review a graphic that shows the process that we've undertaken resulting in the plan that you see in front of you. Smith, is that possible to put that graphic up?
Yes. Is it this one that you're referring to?
Actually, the colorful one I was thinking about. How about the other colorful one? We have several colorful graphics.
I'm so sorry. I did it?
Well, you did this one, right?
I did do this one, yes.
This was very nice. Do you have that other one? Flow chart, or I can just talk through it.
I have a lot of them.
That's the original one.
If you want to continue, I will find it.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So that graphic will just kind of show the way through the process.
It's up.
Actually, that's a really complicated one. We did better than that. Well, I can just talk it through. You may have it in your packet. It's basically what I was talking about earlier. We started with some initial thoughts and vision and where the county wanted to be, engagement of the consultant. A very important step, I think, and the step that so many, even those that do strategic plans, often don't consider is they went to the folks and asked, "What do you think? What do you think the county's priorities should be?" And so, important step in doing those 5 community meetings. Went back to the strategic planning team that I'm a part of, that some of the members of administration are part of. Went to Committee on Administration, I believe, and department heads, to the county board, back to the department heads to really get some detailed descriptions of how this happens, and critically, who's responsible, back to county administration, Committee on Administration, and to the county board. And when you see this colorful graphic, it's quite a sight. At the top of it, I've kind of depicted Speak Your Piece as like the sun shining all over this process, and being part of every step in the process. And it's not meant to be corny. I really think Speak Your Piece can provide that sunlight, that transparency, and provide insight as well as understanding at every step. So the fact that you're committed to staying in connection with not only the department heads, obviously, and different steps within the county government, but the people of the county, I think is it's really important. And I think Speak Your Piece can help shine like the sun and provide some understanding. The people really wanted understanding, and it's not that they're not getting it now, but they wanted more and they wanted to stay engaged. So I know this is the second time that we've come before you with the plan. You've seen it before, and now you've seen it in the current updated form. I'm happy to, along with Frank and Catherine, step through any specific parts of it, or to answer questions that you have, or about the process that we followed to get here.
Schneider with a question.
Supervisor Schneider.
It seems like the imperative to pay more attention to racism, equity, diversity, inclusion kind of came up late in the planning cycle. I believe I saw the word equity in the plan, but I didn't see a real emphasis. Is that something that maybe needs to be emphasized more now?
I think we're all thinking and talking about it a lot more than we were before, and that's probably a very good thing. We did mention equity, and I believe that's is it in Objective 2? We talked a little bit about that.
I think it's Goal 2.
Oh, I'm sorry, Goal 2, that's right.
It is under strategies, last one down, but it's
small part.
We see, where is that one? We talked about working with partners to provide solutions to root problems such as racism, affordable housing, homelessness. I mean, we certainly could put a little more emphasis on that if that's the will of the board. I think
This is Catherine, and I believe that I think that it is something that we can definitely incorporate into the document. And I think that there are a number of things that have recently developed that really heighten it at this time, and some of the work that the board is doing. And so working that into the actual goals, we can go back and make that addition to this plan. As Rob has said, this is a working document, and it will be something that we will continue to use as we plot a pathway forward.
Yeah, that's a great example. When we're talking about enhancing communities and the quality of citizens' lives, there's very specific new twist in the road that's come up, or maybe it's not a new twist. We're just recognizing it in many ways as significant as it is. And a good strategic plan can adapt, should be able to adapt. But you know, a credit to the county already for recognizing that goal too is part of this.
If I'm correct about this, this item is not on our agenda tonight for approval. I assume it will be on the agenda of the July meeting for approval. Is that correct, Administrator Shaw?
The item was placed on tonight's agenda. It wasn't placed in the form or put in the form of an actual resolution for adoption. Based on the fact that this becomes a working document that we continue to work off of. And so if it is the desire of the board to do so, we can put it in the form of a resolution and present it next month.
I think that would be the proper way to do this, I believe. So I'll ask that you prepare this for the resolution for our next board meeting.
Very good. And then what we will also do is take the comments regarding equity and ensure that that is appropriately highlighted in the plan.
Thank you. Anything else, Rob?
No, I've enjoyed working with you and look forward to finishing the process and staying in touch with you as you move forward.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? The next item is an update on the Department of Human Services. We have Diane Cable, Norm Kirk, and Catherine Shaw. Who would like to go?
This is Catherine, and I will simply make a few prefatory comments and then turn the microphone over to both Norb and Diane. The purpose for this item being on the agenda this evening is because of a report that had been distributed regarding a projection. When it was identified that the projection had changed, that information was relayed to the board immediately in the form of at 2 committee meetings, and then one of the deliverables was also a report to the board as a whole, and that is what you are receiving this evening. And so with that, I would ask Norb to begin the conversation, and then Diane Cable, the Human Services Director, has more detail.
I don't see that Diane is on unless she's a call-in user. Diane, if you're there, would you identify yourself?
Yes, I am on the phone. I'm able to get logged in.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Norb.
Okay, I'll just make a couple opening remarks as well, because the meat of the discussion really is what Diane will be covering. But you know, there's been a lot of talk about this particular issue, and you know, the word error, and you know, I think there's been some confusion. I just wanted to really say it's been characterized as an accounting error. Again, it was really an error in an estimation. unfortunate error in an estimation that's done in a manual process. There was nothing incorrectly recorded in the county's financial records. I know there's been some questions about that, but nothing was incorrectly recorded. It was part of a manual process outside of what's been recorded in the financial transactions of the county. And once it was discovered and we were able to validate that that's the case, then I think the follow-on to that was an understanding of what made up the deficit of DHS for 2019, which I think is part of what Diane will speak to.
Okay, so good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Your packet that you received this evening included several documents of the overview of Eau Claire County Human Services 2019 financial, and just want to highlight what those documents are. There's a grouping related to the 2019 preliminary budget to actual comparison by program and sub-program. There's the overview of alternate care financials 2014 through 2019. And then also some responses to questions that were posed from the Budget and Finance Committee, who we met with on June 8th. As we reported to the Budget and Finance Committee on June 8th and is reflected in the documents that you have, the Human Services is projected for 2009 to end the 2019 financials with an overage of about $2.969728 million. This amount does not include a one-time adjustment for the basic county allocation, or otherwise known as the BCA, which was done by finance. When the 2019 budget was presented throughout the budget process, we presented the need to operationally shift the service delivery and reallocate resources budgetarily to support services for in-home and within our communities, and develop delivery of internal provider services, and work towards reducing the reliance upon out-of-home care as our primary service, especially in child welfare. The numbers reflect the story of the needs of our community. Eau Claire County has the second highest poverty rate in Wisconsin. And over the past 5 years, especially, the impact of mental illness and mental health issues, methamphetamine, opioids, alcohol misuse, and other drugs have truly significantly impacted our community. And I know this isn't anything you don't already know. Human Services responds to many of these needs and have been presented with more and more complex and diverse cases. As a result, we are responding to the required mandates that we have as an agency that really focus from a strategic perspective, focusing on recovery services and strengthening and preserving our families and individuals that we work with. So I'm going to pause here, and because I can't see you, just check with Norb and Catherine if there is anything else that they would like to add or highlight to these documents, and then see if there are any questions.
I have a hand raised by Supervisor Wilkie. Supervisor Wilkie, do you want to wait until the comment is made, or would you like to make your...
Well, I'd rather wait until they finish.
All right. I see your hand up. You are first in line.
Okay.
And then Supervisor Cronk after Supervisor Wilkie.
So Norb or Catherine, I'm not certain if you had any other comments to make. Otherwise, I thought we could go to questions.
I guess the only comment I would make is I think that this was a good reflection of where the overages were, what the programs were. I think it sets a good example going forward of the kind of reporting that likely will be needed for all parties involved to understand how the programs are doing, which is why we are looking at setting up additional account segments in our financial ledger system to help the reporting, starting with the 2021 budget and actual reporting.
Minister Shaw?
I have no additional comment at this time.
Supervisor Wilkie?
Well, Nora, first of all, thank you for your clarification on where the error was made, that it's not in our main accounting system in the county, but the error was made in the DHS reporting to its governing committee. And I appreciated also the presentation to Finance and Budget. You know, with DHS approaching close to $1 million over budget for the last 3 years, plus there's an acceleration of the gap funding that we have to provide for. I'm assuming everybody's aware of that. Two separate things, which has a strain on our cash flow. I asked the question at Finance and Budget about, and I asked this to you, Diane, this question is for you, about broadening your approach to mitigation in the department. I believe, I interpreted from what you answered to me, that you agreed that you needed to do this, and also our administrator added that she would be looking at all departments. That leads me to my question. I dug a little bit deeper and I found that you paid in 2019 $485,354 for what I can best determine as horse therapy or horseback riding. Now, for me, and I'm only one of the 29 sitting here, I find it hard to rationalize this expenditure in light of our fiscal situation. Two questions relating to that. I would like to know how many clients were served by that 485,000, and is this item going to be one of the items eliminated in the 2020 budget?
That was a question for
for Diane.
So I won't be able to respond to the entire question in terms of giving you numbers of individuals served through this therapeutic program that uses a variety of different ways of providing services to children and adults with mental illness and substance abuse needs. It is, in terms of the number of individuals served, this program is predominantly used also through the CCS program with recovery of the cost of the services in this program.
Well,
we will pull together the number of individuals who are served through this program.
Yeah, if you could share that through email, I think it's important for supervisors to know what the unduplicated counts of clients served with that 485,000. And of course, recovering the money from either be it a state or federal dollar, it doesn't minimize the issue here for me because it's still taxpayers' dollars. It's just, you know, it all comes out of the same pair of pants. It's just that our taxpayers have different pockets, be it a federal or a state pocket or a local pocket or sales tax or fees, but it all comes out of the same pants. Are you planning on continuing that level of funding for horseback riding in 2020?
So I would say that we don't classify it as horseback riding. With all due respect, it is a therapeutic approach to provide skill development and address trauma with really very significant, with individuals with very significant needs. We always are assessing. I'm sorry.
If there's a supervisor, Supervisor Gatlin, you have your hand up.
Well, can Diane finish?
Yeah, thank you,
One
Mr. Chair.
last follow-up, please.
Director Cable wasn't finished, so.
Okay.
So we're always assessing what programs can best provide recovery services, both in an effective and efficient ways in serving the individuals in our programs.
Well, thank you, Diane. I didn't get a yes or no. If you, it sounds like you're not going to eliminate it in your 2020 budget. I guess my ask of you is to reevaluate that. I'm sure there's many fine things about the program, but given our priorities, I question if we can afford to have that level of expenditure for therapeutic horseback riding.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Wilkie. Supervisor Gatlin, do you wish to make a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. What does in every little square, Diane, there's a column that says purchase? Is that like heavy duty equipment or something? What? There's no specificity, not specific. Do you understand what I'm asking?
Are you asking about purchase services? That line?
It just says purchase. I'd like to know if it's not personnel, it's not services and supply, it's not overhead, it's purchased.
Diane?
So that would be purchase services with providers, services being provided to individuals.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's under by Nick. I'm on the phone, so unfortunately I can't.
Supervisor Bates.
Thank you. I think the question here for me is not how many clients we serve. It's not whether or not this is something that should be eliminated. The question for me and for the board as well is outcomes. When we have individuals who really and truly don't respond to other kinds of therapy that end up costing us a great deal more when they end up going to Mendota or to Triplo County or any number of the other contracts that we have, and we find a way to be able to reach individuals that really don't respond to anything else, my main concern is what are the outcomes? And I think that it would be an advantage to Supervisor Wilkie to recognize that basically this is a practice that often reaches individuals that simply don't respond to human kind of touch and human kind of intervention. So if we want to examine anything in this, let's look at outcomes.
Thank you. The Supervisors Wilkie and Gatlin, when you please lower your hand. Thank you. Makes it less confusing for me. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? I'm looking up. Supervisor McKinney. You have to unmute. There you go.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to just agree with Colleen Bates. I know the horse therapy, there's a lot of research and how helpful that has been with veterans specifically. And I would encourage us to also agree with Supervisor Bates in saying how we really need to look at outcomes when we look at take individual treatments from a program and see where the dollars are best spent. with how it relates to what the outcomes are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Schneider with a comment.
Supervisor Schneider.
I have asked the same question that Supervisor Wilkie asks, and after getting what I consider a very good answer from Director Cable, it made me think that as a board person, although because of my prior life as a psychologist, I'm deeply interested in how do you treat. I think as a board person, that's not my duty to tell her how to make the sausage, to switch my metaphors in midstream. But are we making the sausage we need to be making? And I think we don't have enough money to make it. That's a slightly different question than how many parts of pepper do you put in the sausage? End of comment.
Thank you. Supervisor Roberts, followed by Supervisor Cronk.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Smyer, Chair Smyer. I think one of the things that we have to look at here is like, we have a budget shortfall. And I think one of the things to consider is that analytically, we should be breaking down which programs have high success rates, you know, and find out what their costs are associated per person served in those, and see which ones are actually giving us the most effective allocation of our money. So, my 2 cents, I guess. Thank you.
Supervisor Cronk.
Thank you. I agree with Supervisor Roberts, and I also agree with Supervisor Bates as well as Supervisor Schneider, and the comments from Supervisor McKinney. As somebody who works with CCS clients, not every day, but consistently, those services, one of which you're talking about, the equestrian therapy, are options for people to be able to experience therapeutic care that, again, could save, if we're spending money up front and it's reimbursed later, can save money, if that's all we want to talk about is money, in so many ways on the back end, because we are saving potentially bed spaces in hospitals, away from families in Mendota, in Trempealeau County, in our local county jail, and that very expensive cost. I think we need to look at what do we get for the services that are provided. So to Supervisor Wilkie's point, I mean, it's true. And we do need to look at every single service and see what is the best return on investment. Yes, for money, but also in human lives, in human costs, in human wealth, generational wealth, because many of the clients that are served also have families. The other quick point that I'll make is, as we're looking at what we just spoke about in our strategic plan, maybe not having racism or racist policies, the need to look at that as maybe an afterthought, but in every single department, who's being served, maybe who's not being served, and begin the work to address that. Because if we have that as an overarching, not just in a goal to, or in a hidden line somewhere, but an overarching goal to have racial equity in all of the services that we provide, I think our budget will begin to heal. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Christofferson.
Thank you, Chair Smyer. I would also agree with many of the comments made. And as Supervisor Cronk just stated, with really addressing poverty and racism, with being notated that we are the second highest poverty level of our state, I think that cutting budget in our services that we provide to our community is not always going to be the answer. And I also agree with Supervisor Cronk in saying that we need to look at every piece of the puzzle when we're looking at this. Now, forgive me, I'm brand new, so some of my knowledge is not as deep as many of yours, but is it possible to allocate more money to this department that is in obvious dire need of support, and take money from something like highways and stuff? And I know we're trying to make our highways better for lots of different reasons, but there's a lot of money allocated there. I think we need to look at a lot of options and maybe not just cutting services to people that really need them. That is all.
Supervisor McKinney for the second time.
Thank you, Chairman Smeyer. I would like to bring us back to Supervisor Stelgis' reflection, which was very eloquent. And I would encourage him to share that with all of us in writing, because I think it addressed some of the issues where we get too far into the budgeting, the economy, and we don't think about the people. So Kevin, if you'd please send that to us, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisors McKinney, Christopherson, and Cronk, would you please lower your hands so I know who wishes to speak? Thank you. My understanding is we have two requests for communications to the board. One is the response to Supervisor Wilkie's question, which I'm as a chair, I'm requesting be sent to the entire board, and responding to Supervisor McKinney's request to Supervisor Stelchis, that reflection be also shared with the whole board. Supervisor Stelchis, is that possible?
Sure will. Yep. Okay.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Cronk, I still see your hand up. I'm assuming you just haven't taken your hand down.
I just had one other brief comment, if I could, Chair Smeyer.
Without objection, go ahead.
Thank you. As the county really works to improve public, interaction and communication, I would also, as we're questioning some of these line items, and I'm saying this for myself as well, I always include myself in this, that we actually talk to some of the people, if possible, that are receiving either some of these services, whether it be equestrian therapy, whether it be entrance into some of our involuntary services maybe that are provided, and see what is their feedback about how that has affected them. Has it been helpful? Has it not? So that we're not looking at this from just a point of not knowing or perhaps personal experience. So I would just say that if we can do some more community engagement for the people that actually are participating in these services, because that's where we know also in some of the outcomes requested, how has that affected them? And yes, if we're doing services that are absolutely not worth anything, then of course, why would we continue? Things can always be modified and changed. Again, just to the quick point of CCS, there are therapies that people can experience that would never be covered by insurance. So it is the way to kind of hit some of those creative ways to reach people that haven't been done through traditional means, which originally, in my understanding, was some of the goal of CCS, those wraparound services to be able to be provided with support that we get from the state, although it's late. There's just many other areas in our community that services such as this are not offered. Thank you.
Supervisor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I have a couple of questions. They're more of the nitty-gritty nature. I know that Larson Allen did an audit last year, and I was just wondering if you could summarize how you've been able to improve financial processing and reporting as a result of their report. And then the second question I have is are any of these programs or sub-programs truly optional? Does everything fall into, in some way or another, a state mandated service? It's just a matter of how we want to carry it out, if we want to contract or have internal. Is there anything that isn't mandated?
Director Cable.
With regard to your second question, the programs that we're providing, the services that we're providing are for mandated needs, mandated services. The how we go about doing that sometimes is not directed and mandated. For example, we're required to respond to those with substance abuse and mental illness. We aren't required to run a treatment court. However, what we know about the evidence and the effect of treatment courts, it is a very effective way of responding and collaborating with the criminal justice system, those who come in contact with the criminal justice system and have those needs. With regard to the CLA report, and Norb and Catherine, you may have some additional comments with this. We had and have been always working on improvement of our flow and processes of operations within our fiscal area. Many of the areas were noted and have been implemented in collaboration with finance over the past, I would say, year, and especially we have increased and enhanced our collaboration with finance in helping to improve our reporting and systems, which involve many different things, from setting up new structures and processes.
Supervisor Russell? You're still muted. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Supervisor Beckfield. You have to unmute, Mark.
I'm getting old, near retirement, so go easy on me, okay?
The farther along you are.
I think the answer to your question is she was asking for the report from CLA, and I've not seen that myself, and I was the author of that. And number two, did I hear you right? You're planning on what was this year's estimated total loss to the budget?
This year or 2019?
This year. Does she have? What was that number she gave us? The 2.9 something.
I think it was 2019.
So that was 2.9. And I guess my next question is, as we build budget, are we going to estimate that estimated loss in 2021 when we build budget to be realistic, or are we going to plug numbers to make that look good? Those are just, maybe that's more of a comment that I have, but was that not that report to be given to us supervisors at some point, Administrator Schaaf?
I can speak to that, yes. So the report was actually agendized for it was on the Human Services Committee agenda. It was discussed at their board meeting. It was discussed with the Finance and Budget Committee, and it was discussed with the Committee on Administration. So we had it as a component of each of those three meetings and did the final recommendations. I think we can send it to you once again in written form, but there has been a strategic response put together to remedy that, remedy the areas, and to continue working, I would say, on the areas that were identified for improvement. So that has been underway, and perhaps it would be beneficial for the board to hear a report from Norb and Diane at a future meeting to understand where the progress is in that work. Not only does our Human Services Department work closely with our central finance, but they are also working with other folks who are Jaxel, who is a provider of services, accounting services in the Health and Human Services area, has also been assisting this group in some of this work. So we have a lot of things going on that are very positive and moving us in that direction. So we can definitely resend that report. As I've noted, we've gone over it in great detail with the 3 committees, and can provide a report to the board as a whole. We'll identify with the partners when would be a good time for that. So we will get that back to you.
Supervisors Cronk and Beckfield, please lower your hands. Supervisor Wilkie.
Yes, along with that report of the unduplicated count of clients who received the service for horse therapy, consistent with the comments that have been made, I'd also appreciate if we could get a report on the measurable outcomes.
Was that a question and request?
No, I'm asking that be included when I get the duplicated count of clients served, that I get a report of measurable outcomes.
For that program?
Yes, for that program.
Director Cable?
Yes, thank you. I heard your request. We'll work on sending that to you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wilkie, please lower your hand. Supervisor Beckfield, is your hand, or did you forget to take it down? Supervisor Beckfield?
Trying to lower my hand. I'm not quite sure how to do it. Somebody educate me, would you?
Well, where you raised it, that's where you lower it. Supervisor Christopherson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Smeyer. I just would like to request that those reports that Supervisor Wilkie just requested get shared with the full board. Thank you.
I think that is my assumption, that would be shared with everyone. Thank you. I see no other hands raised.
Success.
Thank you. Always in the process of education, Supervisor Beck. The next items on our agenda are written reports. The 2020 Contingency Fund Report on page 28. The May 2020 payments over $10,000. The Finance Department, pages 29 to 31. Are there any questions regarding those items? I see no hands raised. Oops, sorry. Supervisor DeLuca. You have to unmute. There you go.
Mr. Chair. On page 25, there was the mention of the Veterans Tribute Funds. I was just wanting to know, is this the first or the final installment of the funds? And who determines that the MOU requirements were satisfied?
This is Catherine. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Chair Smeyer, I apologize. I can speak to that. The qualification or the determination that the conditions were met was actually done by Norfolk Finance Director, Tim Sullivan, Corporation Counsel, and myself, to identify that and we made sure that we had consensus on that prior to release of the funds. This is the first payment of the funds. The second release of funds will occur based upon the approval of the bond issuance tonight, as that funding also contains a second installment for the Veterans Memorial.
Thank you. Supervisor Beckfield, did you wish to make any comment?
But I want to thank Eau Claire County one more time from the veterans. It's going along nicely. There will be a groundbreaking, well, actually groundbreaking for the flag was just last week. Flagpole goes up for the 4th of July, and the Eau Claire County Veterans Mall will start the 3rd week of July. And we hope you'll all be there at the dedication in September or October when it's complete.
Thank you. The next two items under written reports are rezoning requests. The first from Cynthia Radcliffe and the second from Brent Welke. These two will go on to a future agenda of this board. The next item under item 7, presentation of petitions, claims, and communications. You have a memorandum from Corp Counsel Sullivan regarding proposed ordinances 27 and 28, pages 34 to 37. That is information attached to file number 28 on your agenda. And finally, communication received from the town, and I have to make a correction here. It should read the town and village of Fairchild. It's really both. And that will come onto our agenda at a later point. Under item 8, we have nothing for our attention. Under item 9.
Would this be a point to ask a question on those reports or not?
Is it in regard to the memorandum from Corp Counsel Sullivan?
Yes.
You might want to hold on to that one until we come to the next item, which is file 28. That would be my suggestion, because it's connected to that file. Okay?
It's actually connected to 27, but...
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is Tim Sullivan. You should know that 27 did not make it out of committee. It's not being considered tonight.
Right. But the question that you wish to ask, I think, might be best asked in regard to file 28, which is coming up. So, okay, can you hold the question?
Sure.
All right, thank you. Next item is from the Committee on Administration and the Committee on Finance and Budget, file number 28.
To amend section 2.04.485 of the code, Committee on Finance and Budget, and to amend section 2.06.060 of the code, budget preparation and execution, and chapter 4.02 of the code, budgetary procedure.
This is a ordinance change. It does require 2 readings. This is the first reading. This will come again to our July meeting for final consideration.
Chair Smyer?
I'm sorry, who's asking for?
This is Supervisor Gibson.
Supervisor
I would
Gibson.
still like to... I tried to send a chat, but it says that it's... I can't because it's disabled. But I would like to make the suspension rules because the budget process has already begun, and I feel that there's no need to delay this for another month.
Ordinarily, I think what you're intending to do, if I'm not mistaken, is make a motion to suspend the rules, specifically the rule for 2 readings of an ordinance change for the purpose of discussing file number 26. That would be your whole motion, to put words in your mouth. The purpose of suspending the rules in a case like this, as I understand, and Corp Counsel can correct me, is to ensure that there's sufficient time for review of the item. And in this particular instance, I don't think there's any emergency here. You are correct. We have already begun some work on the budget. I think the first implication, though, would be for Finance Director Kirk, because that's the first date we're going to run into. So at this point, it's a little bit out of order, but I would ask Director Kirk to give us some information about whether or not the second reading would impact his ability to follow the procedure.
I can address that, Mr. Chair. So, because there were two resolutions and they both had aggressive dates, if you will, in terms of the budget process, we did lay out a preliminary budget calendar, and that calendar has been shared with department heads and the fiscal staffs, and have set the motion in place to have initial submissions of the department budgets request to me by July 15th, kind of regardless of whether either one of the resolutions would have passed. So I'd say at this point, we're well down that path, and the department heads and the fiscal staffs are aware of that, and we're proceeding that way.
I apologize. I stepped out of an ordinary way of handling this. So let me go back to Supervisor Gibson. Supervisor Gibson, did you wish to make that motion? You may make that motion. It is in order.
Yes, I do.
Okay. If I may put words in your mouth again, I understand that you're moving to suspend the rule regarding the requirement of a second reading for ordinance change for the purpose of discussing file 28.
That is correct.
All right.
Henning will second.
I'm Henning. Okay. Second from Supervisor Henning. The vote to suspend the rules requires a 2/3 vote. I believe that's correct. Council.
Mr. Chair, may I speak to that?
Please. Am I
point of order, suspending the rules is not debatable.
Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Excuse me, we're not even there yet. I wanted to clarify first of all that the Corp Council, it is a 2/3 vote. Is that correct?
It is a 2/3 vote.
Okay.
And suspending the rules is not debatable.
Yes, that's correct. Okay. So we will move to a vote. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote so that we can determine 2/3. I think we have, is it 28 supervisors? Sorry?
Correct.
Right. I'm not swift at math, but I think that's
19.
19, right, thank you. County Clerk Loomis, would you please call the roll on this?
Gibson,
Yes.
McKinney,
No.
Knight,
No.
Pagonis,
Yes.
Zook,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Supervisor Chilson,
Yes.
Supervisor Stelgis,
Yes.
Maury,
No.
Coffee,
No.
Henning,
Yes.
Bates,
No.
Yessel,
No.
Gatlin,
No.
Smyer,
No.
Hambick Boyle,
Yes.
Neiman,
No.
Dunning,
No.
Wilkie, Supervisor Wilkie,
Yes. Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Beckfield,
You have to unmute, Mark.
Yes.
yes. Supervisor Beckfield,
Thank you. Schneider?
No.
Leary?
Yes.
DeLuca? Jansen?
No.
Schaffnagel?
No.
Roberts?
No.
Frank?
No.
Christopherson?
No.
Ten yeses, 18 noes, 1 absent.
The motion fails. This item will now be referred to the July meeting for your consideration. Thank you. Under item number 10, reports of standing committees, commissions, and boards under 2.04.160, and second reading of ordinances from the Committee on Administration, file number 26.
Modification to Resolution 2021-017, authorizing the bridge plan related to COVID-19 pandemic to create a task force to address issues related to the COVID-19 crisis.
Supervisor Bates and perhaps Administrator Schaaf.
Motion.
Thank you, Ms.
Motion by Supervisor Bates. Were you moving this?
Yes, please.
Can we have a second, please?
Beckfield, second.
Second, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Speaking to this, excuse me, I jumped the gun there. Supervisor Bates and possibly Administrator Schaaf.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In looking at this, what we're talking about here is the kind of planning and the kind of communication that's necessary to really begin to understand all the elements that come into play because of the COVID-19 crisis. And this really is, I think, looking to say, what more do we need to do? Because obviously, this isn't something that's going to be going away anytime soon. So this appointment of a task force is in direct response to preparing for whatever levels of issues may come up as a result of it.
Thank you. Administrator Schaaf, did you wish to provide any clarification?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Last month, the board approved the beginning of the task force and put the task force into play. This resolution actually modifies the original resolution, which includes the language with a commitment to building equity, diversity, and inclusion in all our financial and operational solutions and paths forward. And so with this amendment, it balances out and indicates the desire of the board to take a very holistic approach to its response. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make comment? Supervisor Kronk, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. Actually, I had proposed to add this language and sort of miss some deadlines and timings after this resolution was passed because I thought it was greatly missing. I felt that if we are going to have a task force that we did approve, that we all, I can't remember if it was unanimous or not, but that we did approve for recovering with our budgets and operations, that this be the core of what we're doing, not just in the economics, but, you know, again, with our operations and services with that lens and our paths moving forward. So I just thought that was language and a goal and a value that was missed as we work toward, all of the things that we were also talking about within our strategic plan. And I think it's critical that we really look with that lens at everything. So that was language that was brought forward for the consideration. I would make an amendment motion. I feel like I'm the queen of amendments, but I would make an amendment to it to include the word policy because it's missing.
So we have an amendment, proposed amendment. Is there a second?
Knight, second.
Schneider, second.
Schneider, second. Or Knight, either one. We'll say Schneider. Okay. So we have an amendment adding the word policies. Supervisor Cronk, would you please read the phrase?
I'm looking for it. Possibly.
Or we
Line
could,
25, I think, right?
You know what? I'm looking. I have double-sided printed pages, which have made it very difficult. I believe the language is somebody, are you able to scroll down to what's showing on the screen here and move it up? Because otherwise I'm just going to be shifting through more papers and wasting people's times. Thank you.
Okay.
Whoops.
Page 38.
There it is. Thank you.
And on this fact sheet, I apologize, I can't see the lines, but may I read the last paragraph because that's where the addition is. Would that be appropriate?
Yes, please, with the addition. Thank you.
Whereas a task force will provide a mechanism to identify issues and create solutions to the financial needs of the county during this crisis and into the future with a commitment to building equity, diversity, and inclusion in all our financial and operational solutions, policies, and paths forward.
Okay, so the amendment is adding the word policies after solutions.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any discussion of the amendment? Any questions? I see no hands raised. I think that we should be able to do that with voice vote. So supervisors, please unmute for the vote. I'll wait until you're unmuted. All those in favor of the amendment to include the word policies in file 26, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed by nay. The ayes have it. It is unanimous. Thank you. We are now back to file 26 as amended. Is there any further discussion of file 26 as amended? I see no hands raised. Supervisor Cronk, please lower your hand.
Sorry.
Don't confuse the troops here.
Sorry.
Thank you. I see no hands raised. So we will proceed to also, I think, a voice vote on this. Supervisors, please unmute for the purpose of the vote. All those in favor of file 26 as amended, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. I hear no nays. The vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is file 30.
Racism is a public health crisis.
This particular resolution, the chair is going to refer to the Board of Health since it has a primary stake in this, and we will bring it back to our July meeting. I'm doing this. This was brought forward by Supervisor Cronk into administration, but at the time, it was my opinion that since it involves a health issue, we should have the Board of Health weigh in on it. So the chair is referring this to the July meeting. Next item is file number 24 from the Committee on Planning and Development.
Amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Clear Creek.
This is ordinance change. This is second reading, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion, please.
Motion by Supervisor Leary.
Thank you. Motion by Supervisor Leary, second.
Henning, one second.
Is that Henning?
Henning.
Supervisor Henning seconds. Thank you. We have the motion and the second explanation. Supervisor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair Smyer. This is to request us to rezone 23.6 acres from AP agriculture to A3 agriculture, so that to allow them to construct a single-family residence. The planning and development staff finds that this proposed rezoning conforms to the Eau Claire County's comprehensive plan, and they recognize the proposed A3 zoning district is consistent. The town of Clear Creek, they considered this rezoning and the board recommended approval. We held the Eau Claire County Planning and Development, conducted their required public hearing, and we voted 5-0 in favor.
Thank you. Are there any questions or is there any discussion regarding this file? I see no indication of a wish to speak. I will do this by voice vote also. Supervisors, please unmute for a moment. All those in favor of file 24, amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Clear Creek, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay? I hear no nays. The vote was unanimous. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is file from the Committee on Planning and Development and the Committee on Parks and Forests is file number 22.
Encouraging the Eau Claire County Deer Advisory Committee to establish harvest quotas and population levels that promote forest health and diversity, sustain forest regeneration, and slow the spread of chronic wasting disease on the public lands within the Central Forest Deer Management Unit of Eau Claire County.
Motion?
I raise my hand in motion, Tammy Schruffnagel.
Sorry, Tammy. I wasn't looking at the screen. Thank you.
Second by Gatlin.
Supervisor Gatlin, second. Explanation. I'm going to call the Supervisor Stelzis.
Okay. Supervisor Gibson is on both committees, so he can speak. He can speak well to this as well. Maybe better than I.
He's next. Go ahead, Supervisor. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you deferring to him? You were deferring to Supervisor Gibson?
I was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor.
Unless he doesn't want to, yeah.
Okay.
No,
you're right.
I can. Actually, this came from Land Conservation and Parks and Forest.
Right, right.
Basically, this resolution relates to the process by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, which, they're the ones that establish the harvest goals in the state and specifically within Eau Claire County, okay? Now, what the foresters have noticed, which I have, and Supervisor Stelzis probably has too, but I've received several emails from both the state and county and retired foresters that, and I guess let me kind of paint a picture here before I go on to this next statement, because actually I live out here, and for several years there was actually no permits issued for shooting a doe out here. The DNR, what they've tried to do by doing that is to increase the herd, which I think it was 2 years ago, they started issuing doe permits so that, you could shoot a doe out here, but the herd has increased significantly. So what's been reported by the foresters is that because of the deer population, they're eating the newly planted, like red pines, where the red pines have been harvested. The oak is has repeatedly been browsed. So when they harvest the oak, that's what sprouts to allow the growth of the oak. They're like eating it to death, and even the young jack pines, they're eating those. So what they'd like to see in the last couple of years, the Wisconsin DNR has issued, there's like 4,500 acres of forest land out here, and they've issued, like, in the last 2 years, like maybe 125 permits a year. And you can figure when somebody goes out hunting, you can figure roughly maybe about 30% of those issued do get harvested. So with that being said, the request for this is to submit it to the Natural Resources Board, which they meet at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. So if we can get this passed tonight, Janet can submit this prior to that meeting so that they will look at that. Currently, there is a proposal out there to raise the permits issued from 125 up to 200 to help, like, kind of control what's happening in our forest. And based on that percentage, they're looking at maybe about one more antlerless deer harvested per 1,000 acres. So if anybody's got any questions, and Kevin, you want to add anything to this, go ahead.
No, I think you covered it in great detail. Again, the concern is forestry and browsing, regrowth, whether it's natural regeneration or things that have been planted. And, when you look at it statistically, like Gary just mentioned, right now there's about one antlerless deer harvested per 1,000 acres of county forest, whereas, the population density is probably, I don't know, per 1,000 acres, it's more than 50. It might be 100. So.
Thank you.
Schneider with a question.
Supervisor Schneider.
Why did they put it down to 0 at some point?
Well, because the DNR's, their goal was initially is to increase the deer herd. That's what it boils down to. And currently, for the years that they did, it has increased the herd, but now we're looking at what the foresters are noticing in the woods, and that's what brought this forward. And basically, it's a recommendation for them to increase the allowed antlerless permits.
So they were too successful.
Correct.
Supervisor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair Smyer. Just to chime in on this as well, it seems like another potential reason why the deer herd is getting higher and higher, and maybe potentially too dense for this parcel of land. It seems like deer hunting numbers overall are in decline. So that could be contributing to it. So that would also be like kind of like almost like a double whammy, and allow the herd to grow faster than it normally would have, say, back when deer hunting was really prevalent in, say, like the 80s or 90s. If it's not as prevalent now, which the numbers apparently from like what I saw in the news a while back, the numbers were down. So I'm just saying that, we have a couple of conditions that are contributing to this, and we need to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other hands raised. I assume you are prepared to vote. We could do this also by voice vote, I think. Supervisors, please unmute for the vote. Okay, all those in favor of file number 22, encouraging Eau Claire County Deer Advisory Committee to establish harvest quotas and population levels, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Hey, Chair Smyer.
Who's that?
This is Supervisor Gibson again.
Sorry, Supervisor Gibson.
It's my understanding. It's my understanding.
I meant to
My
say,
under,
to the clerk, ask the clerk if she could refer this immediately.
Click add extension.
Yes, I have it ready to go for tomorrow. I have to get it there before 11, so.
Was that your
Okay.
concern?
that was,
Supervisor?
yes, that was my question because
Okay.
we're really restricted because of the timeline.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't pick up on that again. Sorry. All right.
I said that was my question. You know, when Janet said that she can have it submitted, that was my question if there was time to get it submitted.
Right.
Because the DNR's meeting is at like 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. So.
Ooh. The clerk Lewis, can you do it that quickly?
Yes, I have it ready. I'm prepared for that, yes.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to file number 5 from Committee on Finance and Budget and Human Resources. Clerk, would you read it, please?
Replace 1 FTE Fiscal Associate 2, Grade E with 1 FTE Fiscal Associate 3, Grade G position.
Motion. Supervisor Wilkie, are you moving?
Yes, I would move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Seconds.
Dunning seconds. Okay, and for explanation, I'm going to go to Supervisor Beckfield first. Supervisor Beckfield?
I'm sorry, I'm having some challenges on this end.
Would you prefer that I would go to Supervisor Pagonis?
That would be better, or Norm. Either one is fine.
Well, I'll go to Supervisor Pagonis because it's coming from that committee also.
Thank you.
Supervisor Pagonis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request to make a change to one of the fiscal associates from a 2 to a 3. The purpose for this is that the finance department has somewhat modified what it is doing on a daily basis with the intent of getting more analytical and looking at overall financials rather than doing things that were done previously, which have now been pretty much done with enhanced software. So it's basically because the department overall is attempting to, I'm going to say, raise its level of involvement in terms of financial analysis and policy. And to this particular position has a higher level of expectation of the person who's going to be in it in terms of education and experience. So I would encourage support for this.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Are there any questions? Supervisor DeLuca.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The charts and I know Supervisor Pagonis mentioned that it requires more education and so forth, but whether the position we're abolishing or the one we're creating, I noticed that it from 2020 fiscal impact and the 2021 fiscal impact, there's almost a $20,000 increase. Why would that be? Is it due to steps?
I think it's the increase was $1,200 for 2021, and it's $545 for 2020. So I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Well, I'm
sorry. I know what you're looking at. Let me explain. The first chart is for half of the year. The second chart is for the entire year.
Okay. I understand now then. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Any other questions? Supervisors, I assume you're prepared to vote. Please unmute. We'll do this by voice vote also. Please unmute. Everyone. Thank you. All those in favor of file 5, replacing 1 FTE Fiscal Associate 2 with 1 FTE Fiscal Associate 3, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. The next item on our agenda from the Committee on Finance and Budget is file number 32.
A resolution awarding the sale of, and in the pack or in the agenda, it says 18,945,000, but actually the final copy of the resolution, which Supervisor Pagonis hopefully can confirm, is actually 17,060,000 in general obligation promissory note series 2020A.
Motion?
So move.
Supervisor Bates moves. Second.
Supervisor Cronk?
Supervisor Crock seconds. From the Committee on Finance and Budget, Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this resolution represents our annual borrowing request. I believe most people on this board are aware that we typically borrow later in the year, but for a variety of reasons, we're doing it in this time frame. The way the county has typically handled capital in the past is that we would finance it with funds we had on hand, and then we would do the borrowing and reimburse ourselves. However, for several reasons, one, we anticipate that revenues will be down this year as a result of COVID, specifically sales tax and fees, fines, and forfeitures. So that's problematic. Secondly, there's a great deal of volatility in the market, and we are receiving very favorable interest rates. The third reason why it's being done now is because of what we view as additional pressure on county's cash flow and an inability to be able to cover cash flow smoothly over the coming months. I want to remind everyone that the County on Finance and Budget does not have the authority to present this resolution. On May 26th, in a meeting that I had with Chairman Smyer, he specifically said the Finance Committee does not have the authority unless it's in the code. It's not in the code to have the Finance Committee put forth a resolution regarding borrowing, and Chairman Smyer then said, no, it's based on past practice. So this, I view that as a 180% reversal. This resolution is being presented without authority from Finance and Budget, but is just doing it because, according to Chairman Smyer, we can because of past practice. So I feel that the committee has been put in a compromised position, but nonetheless, here is the resolution for borrowing. I believe we need it. It is $17,060,000. It's at a very, very favorable rate. And if you would have had an opportunity to look at the materials before coming in, we're getting this at a rate of 1.19%. And so that's very favorable. One more thing I want to mention, this represents two separate issues. I don't mean borrowing issues, but I mean two separate matters for the county. $9 million of it is for our capital request, and $9 million is to refund prior older borrowing that was part of the building renovation. So that's why the amount is as high as it is, because the in the budget, in the 2020 budget, the capital request was a little bit over $9,400,000. So that the reason why it's so high is because it also includes a refunding, but the rates are very, very favorable. So without authority, I encourage approval.
Just with a point of clarification, I'm going to ask the Corp Counsel to comment on the purview of budgeted finance and past practice.
Well, the discussion came to me from both Supervisor Pagonis and also Supervisor Smyer, Chair Smyer. The question was, first of all, Supervisor Pagonis, is there any information in the code that authorizes finance and budget to authorize borrowing or deal with borrowing? And I confirmed based on her assumption that there was not any authority in the code concerning that. And then the matter came up for consideration. There was discussion that I had with Chair Smyer about whether or not they could do that. And my response was that they have done it in the past. So there is an established history of past practice. And so, so based on that and based on the fact that much of our budgeting procedure at this time is based on past practice, they would also have the authority on that past practice to present information concerning borrowing for the county. Maybe that's something that we need to consider putting into the code, but obviously that's not there at this time.
We may consider that for, I don't know if we can include that in the ordinance change we're putting forward to July, but we can come back to that. I see Supervisor Gibson with his hand up.
Yes, thank you. I got a question because a couple of years ago, which was supposed to have helped us offset the amount that we are borrowing for highway improvements, and I see in here that this is also supposed to go to highway improvement. So that $30 wheel tax, how is that playing into this? Because are we borrowing the same amount? Are we offsetting that borrowing by what that wheel tax had generated? How is this affecting what we're borrowing?
Bonus?
Yeah, I can answer it somewhat. So the commitment for the vehicle registration fee was that, number one, there would not be a reduction in levy, and number two, unless and until the PACER rating was at 6 or higher, we would continue at the same level. And so it's when we get some type of feedback from the highway committee regarding where the PACER rating is, we are continuing at the same rate. There are maybe I better defer to Supervisor Henning, but I know there is an accelerated plan on some bridges this year and some of the other highways. So the plan is to get to PACER rating of 6 or higher.
Supervisor Henning, did you wish to make comment?
Well, she covered it right. But we have given up some stuff in the anticipation of financing it with this process. So earlier in the year, we forgave things so that we could cover it at the end.
Supervisor Gibson, was your question, at the root of it, was your question whether that money from the vehicle registration fee is restricted to highways? Was that part of your question?
I can answer that too.
Okay.
I can answer that. That is, there's only one place they can use that, and that's for highway improvements. And on our website for Eau Claire County, it shows where every penny of the wheel tax went and is going. So you can follow that at any time. So it shows what it's being used for.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, this is Supervisor Pagonis, just one more point. The resolution, state statute requires that it stay with highway, but the resolution that we drafted passing the vehicle registration fee said for highway improvements and for maintenance. So for summer maintenance, if there were a need to use it for that.
Thank you.
Schneider with a question.
Supervisor Schneider.
Did we get as good a rating as a county could get? I'm not familiar with those codings.
Supervisor Pagonis.
Sure, I understand the question. I think the rating scale is 0 to 10, and I think we agreed as a board that 6 was a good place to, an affordable level to get to. I mean, obviously, heavier traveled highways have.
I was asking about our bond rating.
Oh, our bond rating. Oh, I thought you were talking about PACER ratings because we were talking about highway.
No.
Yes, in the bid tabulation, there were 5 bids that came in. We're opting obviously for the lowest one, as I said, was 1.19, so very, very low interest rate. And I know that our bond person is at the meeting. He's on this call. So if you need more information about that, he's available.
My question was our county, as far as our county's health, I think they issue bonds. They call them AAA, or I don't know. The
Okay. I'm sorry.
categories of bonds.
Right.
Is ours as good as we can get?
Yes. So counties our size don't typically get above a AA1 rating. That's what we've had for the past several years. We had some concerns that there would be issues with the Moody's who they do the bond rating, but they were satisfied with what the county is doing relative to COVID and economic mitigation. They were satisfied with how it was presented that we're managing the county funds.
Thank you. That was my question.
Thank you. Supervisor Gibson, your hand is still raised. Did you have more to say, or? Thank you. Okay. Supervisor McKinney.
I'm confused. I thought we were going to vote on
We're voting on bond issue.
the interest thing, and we went to bond. Aren't we those two different issues?
We're voting on the general obligation promissory note,
Right.
the sale of it. So
And
yes,
that's separate from the bond issue, right?
in the context, there were some connected questions, and that's
Oh, okay. Thank you.
maybe what confused. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions regarding file number 32? I believe we should do this by roll call vote. Supervisor Pagonis, would that be correct?
It would be my preference.
It is my preference also. Thank you. So, you call the roll, please.
Gibson,
No.
Kinney,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Pagonis,
Yes.
Zook,
Yes.
Gilson, Supervisor Chilson.
Don't see him on the list of participants.
Okay. Stelgis,
Yes.
Maury,
Also, don't see him on the list of participants. Oh, there he is. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Maury, did you say yes? Thank you. Coffee,
Yes.
Henning,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Gatlin,
Yes.
Smyer,
Yes.
Hambeck Boyle,
Yes.
Neiman,
Yes.
Dunning, Supervisor Dunning,
Yes.
thank you. Wilkie,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beckfield,
Us and Supervisor Chilson just sent me a thing. He's got kicked out somehow.
okay. Good, did he answer you how he would have voted?
Actually, it's a yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Snyder,
Yes.
Leary,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Schroffnagel,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
And Christopherson.
Yes.
Okay. There's 1 no and 2 absent. Let me just check on that again. No, now with Chilson there. 27 yeses, 1 no, and 1 absent.
The
It
final,
passes.
the resolution does pass. Thank you. The final item on our agenda is appointments. Appointment of members to various boards, commissions, and councils. I've appointed Chris Boyle to the ADRC board, Lieutenant Benjamin Frederick to the Local Emergency Planning Committee, and Darren Schwab, Gary Esslinger, and Randall Stutzman to the Board of Land Use Appeals. And the chair looks for confirmation.
I would move to approve. This is Dunnings.
Thank you. Motion by
Beckfield, a second.
and second by Beckfield. Thank you. We'll do this also by voice vote. Supervisors, please unmute for a moment. For a final moment. All those in favor of the appointments as listed, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. We've reached the end of our agenda. We are now adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and Eau Claire County.